Hey, it's Anthony with howtogetintodramaschool.com. We've got an awesome podcast for you today. My friend, my Juilliard classmate, and actor in New York City, Geoff Murphy, is the guest on the podcast today. Now, Geoff is especially awesome for you to listen to, especially if you are having a fear of getting rejected in your drama school auditions. We all deal with that, but Geoff not only dealt with it, he actually got rejected in his Juilliard audition the first time, and he got rejected a second time when he auditioned for Juilliard, and he finally got accepted the third time he auditioned for Juilliard. Fortunately for me, he got accepted into my class, so I got to meet him and become friends with him. He's an awesome guy, and he's got a lot of wisdom to share about how to get into drama school, from choosing your monologues and having a certain mindset, and he's just a really funny guy as well. So enjoy. I interviewed him over the phone, so you'll hear that, but it's very clear, and it's definitely a good interview. So let's get right into it. Here's Geoff. Enjoy. All right, I am here with my friend Geoff. Geoff, how are you?
Doing good, Anthony. How you feeling?
I am great, as always, whenever I talk to you. Geoff is my classmate. Really excited to speak with him about a specific topic. Geoff knows that the folks listening are auditioning for drama school, young actors who are dedicated, advanced, serious, really wanting to take their career to the next level with world-class training. And so, with those sharp people in mind, Geoff, let's dive right into it.
Sure.
You auditioned for school, and then you got accepted, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but you auditioned multiple times, and then eventually got into Juilliard. So I want to get your story about how you initially auditioned. You initially went to school, and then how did you make the decision to audition again, and what was the feelings throughout that process?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to tell you all about that. Basically, I went to a year of college in Pennsylvania, and I decided I wanted to go to a conservatory. And so I always wanted to go to Juilliard because, Kevin Kline and all of that, and because I just had it set in my heart. That's where I wanted to go to.
Yes.
But I applied to 5 schools. I applied to Juilliard, Carnegie Mellon, North Carolina School for the Arts, which I guess is called now UNCSA, SUNY Purchase, and Boston University.
Very similar to me. Yeah.
What's that?
Very similar to me.
Right.
Good schools.
I prepared my audition, all that fun stuff, was rejected by all of them, and wound up going to NYU for the next year. And NYU was a good school, but I still had my heart set on Juilliard, so I applied again the next year, and also did not get a call back. And I'm sure we'll get into this in a moment, but a number of other things happened. I was graduating from NYU, and I knew I wanted more training, so I applied one last time, and I wound up getting in. So
that's amazing.
It's sort of a
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. So, you were actually already at NYU, is that correct?
Yeah. I was graduating from NYU when I
decided to audition for some other schools.
I at that point, I actually auditioned for Juilliard and for NYU grad. I didn't wind up getting into NYU grad, so you got to deal with me for 4 years.
Oh man, and how fortunate we were. Geoff is just an amazing artist. He finds humor in some of the darkest places, and he's always I remember one play we did, Buried Child. I still, whenever I see pictures on my Facebook or whatever from that stuff, you look horrifying, and it is so amazing. I will never forget how truthfully and iconically you just portrayed some of these characters, even in class. Just unbelievable work.
Buddy.
And
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I couldn't have gotten through it without you. I'm sure everybody who's listening to this podcast has gotten a feel for who you are as a person. But you're one of the most caring and positive and just joyous human beings I've ever known. So I'm grateful for knowing you.
Thank you, man. Likewise. So I want to get a little bit. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the auditions.
Sure.
This is about how to get into drama school. So,
Absolutely.
a lot of people get rejected, right?
It's also just something people should get used to in the life. I mean, honestly, like, you're gonna get rejected most of the time as an actor. That's okay. It's part of the game. It's not something to feel bad about. It's just like waking up and brushing your teeth. It's just something that happens a lot, and then sometimes things go your way.
Yeah, and so when you're young like that, though, early 20s and like a young actor, and you're like thinking about your future, and you're like putting yourself in front of these schools who can essentially, train you for the next 4 years, for the next chapter of your life. It's there's a lot of emotion around it, and I know that from talking with a lot of the students who are auditioning and some of the students I'm coaching and everything, a big fear, and I'm wondering if you felt this or how you dealt with this. A big fear is, I know I'm good. I know that I've got some good stuff, but I don't know if I can deliver it in that room when all the pressure's on. So, like, did you ever have the fear of, like, I don't know if I can, like, deliver my best work when the stakes are so high?
I mean, I think that that's something that every performer deals with in different times and in different capacities. It's definitely something, I mean, God, I was a huge ball of nerves pretty much every time I went in there, And the first time I got rejected, I was devastated. Oh God, I was just completely just sobbing on a couch. Just it was really really emo, very like 18-year-old getting their dream crushed. But ultimately, my dream wasn't crushed. It just wasn't time for my dream. And that's the reality of it. But the thing is like, as much as you are auditioning for these programs, it's important to keep in mind that, one, not every program is right for you. So you're also kind of auditioning them. And beyond that, worst case scenario here. Worst case scenario, you don't wind up, getting into the school that you want to get into. You can learn the skills that you need to learn if you have your heart set on the thing. If you have your heart set on something, you can find your way to. There's all sorts of ways to get training and to learn. Is it easier when it's all in one place? Absolutely. Is it nice to have the connections that a big school has? Totally. Is it necessary to have those things to be a success? Absolutely not. So you can take a little bit of that pressure off of yourself, because it's like showcases. So Anthony and I, when we were going to school, at the end of the project, we had these showcases, and there was just so much pressure on making the right impression with the casting directors, making the right impression with the agents, blah, 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 blah. And everybody would tell you leading up to it that they're like, it's not as important as it seems. And it was really hard for us to wrap our heads around that, because it felt really important at the time. But the reality of it is that it's not as important as it seems. It's true. Because you are not made or broken in a day. You are an artist who is growing every day. If you are making the choice to improve every day, to do the things that you need to do, no one decision is going to destroy you, And so there's lots of people who come out of showcases, have no agent, wind up doing great. There's lots of people who come out of showcases, get an agent, and they don't wind up working out. But like, everybody's journey is different. So I would say that if you're worried about being anxious in the room, which is a very rational reaction, I would say that it is important to remember that this isn't as important as it feels.
Right. And also they're looking for people who they feel like have potential but need training. So it's not like you need to be perfect. They're not looking for someone with some sort of finished product. I certainly, if you will, made mistakes, or, I didn't forget a line or anything, but like I I just basically played, and I'm getting, from faculty members that we speak with and everything about like, what you want to see in the room is someone who's uniquely themselves and not afraid to just play.
Absolutely.
And dive and apply their full imaginative capacity to whatever is being asked of them, And do you remember, is that pretty much in line with how you felt when you auditioned? Like, did you feel like you were just going for it?
I mean, yeah.
Can you describe your audition a little bit?
Sure. So I had somewhat of an abnormal audition situation, I would say, because I'm not sure how much this is going to be useful for your podcast, but like I went in the first time I auditioned, and honestly, the memory of that is such a blur to me. And I didn't get called back, and then I auditioned again. I didn't get called back, and I decided that what I was going to do was I was going to figure out what they were looking for.
Oh, this is genius! I can't wait to hear about this. This is the best.
Okay, so what I did was I found out that there was a summer program that was being run by members of the faculty, specifically Becky Guy and Ralph Zito and Wendy Waterman. So I auditioned for that, which I put a lot of work into that. It was sort of a different kind of thing. It was a theater festival in upstate New York. So I went and auditioned for that. I wound up getting into that. And I spent the summer working with these faculty members. And, actually Wendy wound up writing one of my letters of recommendation to get into the school.
Oh, that's awesome.
The weird thing was that when I then came to audition for the school, I was put into an audition room with Becky as one of the audition monitors. And then Becky came out and she's like, no, you can't be in my room because I already picked you for Chautauqua. So they sent me to a different room. But what was weird about that was they put me in the room where Wendy was. So I literally had the person who wrote my letter of recommendation behind the table, which is, it is what it is. But ultimately,
but you did your monologues, right? You did your monologues. Was there any special? Because there's multiple people behind the table, not just Wendy. Yeah. Is that correct?
It was Wendy and I think it was Richard and I know Richard was there and maybe Daryl, but essentially, I think one of the things they were worried about with me when I came in is that I had a fair amount of training before that. And they were worried that I would maybe not be as malleable, because a lot of these programs really do like really raw talent because there might be less resistance to, whatever. And I had a lot to learn. I mean, I had a lot to learn. But so they would play around. I remember specifically, because there was one of my Shakespeare monologue was from King John, and was the Dauphin talking to the legate of the Pope, and Richard just kept sort of changing the situations. He wanted to make sure I wasn't overly coached. You know what I'm saying?
Right. See if you could respond in the moment to what adjustments he's given you and stuff.
Exactly. Because, it is possible to take somebody and just coach them into being really good.
Exactly.
But what they're looking for is not somebody who's really good at doing this monologue. What they're looking for is somebody who's eager to learn, who's willing to make bold choices and listen and adjust and really, and that being in that room didn't get me into Juilliard. What I think got me in was the callback process, which back then it was, all that same day, as I'm sure you were. Well, where did you audition, man?
I did. I was the last year that ever did the regular one-day audition. Now, if you're not familiar, for those of you listening, there's a callback weekend. So once you audition, you wait a couple of days or whatever to find out if you got called back for the callback weekend. And there's a whole weekend where you essentially are a student in class with the 40 other folks who got called back. But back when me and Geoff auditioned, it was just one big day, from like 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. or sometimes midnight, and you do the callback, you do the interview, everything, and that was it. And then you get a call a few weeks later, a few months later, if you got in. So continue.
Yeah, so basically now it's just more of the same things that we would do in the callback period of the day. But there's a lot of getting together and doing theater games and interacting with people. Obviously, you do your monologues again for the whole faculty. But I feel like it was an interesting experience doing the theater games with all of these people who I didn't know, except for one of them who turned out to be Gabe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Gabe and I were in the same callback day.
Gabe is our classmate.
Yeah. Tony Award winner.
Tony Award winning classmate, gee.
But good guy. But we were playing theater games, and there were a lot of people who were like trying to show how talented they were through theater games. But the people that the faculty seemed to respond most to were the people who were there about trying to support the other people auditioning. I mean, because ultimately they're trying to form a theater company.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to find 18 people to do great plays over 4 years. And so you need people who won't be jerks. You need people who will support each other. You need to sort of and it's better now that they have the weekend, but you're trying to sort of blindly create a family from a bunch of disparate parts. So I think that the attitude that I brought into the room for the callbacks was what sealed the deal for me, probably, because I was, well, it's actually, similarly, I will say this, is that after leaving school, I've had a lot of time working as an audition reader in the professional world. Which is, for those who don't know what that is, when you're auditioning for a part on Broadway or really, any major sort of mostly theater production, you will have an actor who's hired by the casting director to read the other side of the scene that you're doing. And I've actually booked I booked my first Broadway show doing that but it's a very interesting experience to have watching so many people audition. Because there's a sense in your head of, oh gosh, I've got to look good. But you've got to push through that, because that is sort of counter to what acting is. When you're on the stage, what you're trying to do is listen and react as well as possible through the lines. So if you're up there trying to be like, I want to move here when I want to do this, and I want to say this and stand here, and that stuff doesn't really translate well to acting. So for professional actors, something I say a lot is go in there and make the reader look really, really good. Because if you're going in, because I found that I do some of my best work as an audition reader because I'm not trying to be good. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to help that person get a job. So if you go into those callback weekends and you try and make sure that everybody else gets into the program, you might actually wind up making yourself look really, really good.
I think that's totally valid. I love that. I love that perspective. And thanks for sharing that story about Audition Reader. I know we've talked about that, and that's super valuable. Like, I do remember in my audition, like, during those games, I just loved playing the games. And so you would be able... It's so fun. Yeah, it's so fun. And so if you are able to engage with the others and play with the others, you're really applying all your energy and your imagination, but in service of others, so it's like, be present, really play with others, I think is something that is good. And that includes the director. Like you said, Richard, who was behind the table, kind of gave you some adjustments or asked you to do this or that. You're playing with them as well. It's like, oh yeah, okay, let me try that. And then go for it. So this is great. This is fantastic. I had a couple other notes. Let me see if I can bring them up here. I want to ask you about your pieces real quick because we're kind of coming to the end of our time. But
Sure.
Do you remember, like, did you change your pieces year after year? How did you feel about your pieces? Like, how did you choose which pieces you wanted to do?
Well, I mean, originally, I think, as I recall, originally I think it was from Love's Labour's Lost, I was doing Baroon from Love's Labour's Lost, and I was doing a monologue from Marvin's Room. Now, that play particularly is very well suited for a younger male actor, but I sort of aged out of that as I went through the 4 years involved with those auditions.
Yeah.
So I had to. It's still a lovely monologue. I didn't get into any schools with it, but I still like it. But I mean, ultimately, when you're choosing a piece, it's about finding one that gets you excited, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with it. You know, it doesn't have to be. There's no right monologue. You know, one of our teachers would say that there was this one Shakespeare monologue that was the right monologue for everybody. I don't think that's true. I think that it's just about what gets you jazzed, you know? So I know somewhere along the line I got involved with the King John monologue, and I just really liked it. It was very active, and I felt like it gave me a lot of things to do with it. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there's anything other than just read plays. If you love acting, if you want to be a professional actor, read plays. Just read all the plays. And then if you see something, it doesn't even necessarily have to be age appropriate. It doesn't even have to be gender appropriate. If it's something that is calling to you, do it.
Yeah,
here's the thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's going back to a theme we were talking about earlier. They're not looking for people to come in and be perfect. They're not looking for people to come in and be perfectly coached and do an amazing, like, here's the first day of a performance of a show. They're looking for somebody to come in and try some stuff and be open to working with people and be excited about being challenged. So, you know, challenge yourself and be proud of that, and be proud of not being perfect, because you're never going to be perfect.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I wanted to ask about, so this has been great, by the way. Thank you for sharing. You know, your stories are great. Your advice is great. You're very articulate. And we're hitting a lot of...
Anything for the waffler.
Hey. I look forward to having you again on the podcast as we move forward. So I know that the Tonys are coming up. Are you following any of those nominations or anything like that?
I personally am not. But that is, I think it's to each their own kind of situation. But I personally don't really enjoy award shows, because I feel like it just isn't in the spirit of what I love about acting.
For sure.
And theater. Because ultimately it's advertising. You know, awards are, I think it's great when people I love win things. But like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that is, and I mean that in the best possible way.
Yeah, it's not crucial to the storytelling. It's not crucial to the craft. It's it's like an event. It's an awards night. I get it. Yeah, no,
particularly the Tonys, because it's a weird situation where the Tony voters, a large majority of them are people who run touring houses around the country. So what'll happen is people or shows will get nominated, and then they have this conference every year. So I think it's called the Spring Road Conference. All of these people will come in and they'll get wined and dined by producers, and they'll be taken to events where, like, you know, I will say this. To Gabe's credit, our beloved classmate who won a Tony Award a couple years ago, Gabe didn't do any of this stuff, and he still won. So, good for him. But, like, there's just a lot of networking and a lot of elbow rubbing and all that sort of stuff that just, it's perfectly fine. It's not a bad thing, but it's just sort of not really what I'm...
Not really your thing.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
not what
great.
I care about.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this was great. Like, we just wanted to focus on how to get into drama school. These kids, young actors rather, are really excited. They're dedicated. They're sharp. So I think this was really valuable. I know this would have been valuable for me. And I look forward to having you on again, man.
Absolutely. I would say the most important thing for kids who might have an experience somewhat like mine is to remember that it's like the Bruce Wayne thing. Why do we fall? So we can learn how to get back up. It's that every failure just gives you another opportunity to grow and learn. So if you're constantly pushing yourself to grow and learn, no one can stop you.
Yes. And with that, we will end this podcast. Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay. See ya.